What happens when one of the most polarizing former presidents in U.S. history sits down with one of late-night TV's sharpest comedic minds, and neither one is willing to blink? Tonight we're diving into the on-air showdown that had everyone talking. A rapid-fire verbal sparring match that escalated so fast it left the studio audience stunned and the crew scrambling behind the scenes. Before we get into the blow-by-blow, tap that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what you think really caused this whole thing to spiral. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was wrapping what looked like a routine week of tapings when producers got an unexpected call. Trump's team reached out, floating an appearance that they said would showcase a more measured diplomatic side of the former president. Colbert's producers, always on the hunt for compelling television, took the booking fully aware they might be inviting fireworks. When Trump stepped onto the familiar Ed Sullivan Theater stage, the audience response was mixed. Some cheers, some uneasy silence. Colbert, ever the pro, stood to greet his guest with that trademark grin, though anyone who knows him could spot the slight tension in his shoulders. "Welcome back to The Late Show. I'm Stephen Colbert, and I'm here with Donald Trump," he said as he settled behind the iconic desk. "You've been on the show before, and it's always, shall we say, eventful." Trump adjusted his tie, leaned back in the guest chair, and answered with characteristic swagger. "Stephen, great to be here. You know your ratings always go up when I'm on." "Tremendous. Really tremendous." "Well, that's generous of you," Colbert replied, one eyebrow lifting. "Though I have to ask, are you actually keeping track of our ratings?" "That does sound like something you'd do. I keep track of everything, Stephen. Everything. And when Trump shows up, people watch. That's just how it goes." The audience chuckled, but Colbert pushed ahead. "Since we're talking about things people watch, there's been a lot of attention on your recent comments about the justice system. You've said various investigations against you are politically motivated. Help me understand, do you believe any criticism of your actions is automatically political?" Trump's tone shifted, a firmer edge creeping in. "Stephen, what's happening to me is like nothing any former president has ever faced. It's a disgrace. The weaponization of our justice system against political opponents. It's the kind of thing you see in a third world country. But you can understand why people have questions when someone in power faces legal scrutiny." Colbert countered, leaning in. "Isn't accountability part of what keeps a democracy healthy?" "Accountability." Trump's voice rose. "Let me tell you about accountability. I was the most transparent president in history. Everything I did was perfect. Absolutely perfect. What we're seeing now is a witch hunt. The greatest witch hunt in political history." Colbert kept his expression controlled, but his tone sharpened. "I'm sorry. Did you say everything you did was perfect?" "That's quite a claim. I'm not sure even George Washington would say everything he did was perfect. George Washington never had the fake news media. I had Trump shot back. He didn't have people making up stories every single day. If Washington had my press coverage, he might have quit." The room grew noticeably quieter as the temperature rose. Colbert maintained his composure, but made it clear he was prepared to press. "Interesting comparison. Let's get specific. You've repeatedly claimed the 2020 election was stolen despite recounts, audits, and court decisions confirming the results. At what point do you accept that maybe, just maybe, you lost? Trump flushed and shifted in his seat. "Stephen, I didn't lose. It's been proven over and over. The evidence is overwhelming. Dead people, voting machines, flipping votes, ballot harvesting. Total disaster. Anyone with half a brain can see it. But courts, including judges you appointed, found no evidence of widespread fraud." Colbert pressed. "Are you saying dozens of judges, election officials from both parties, and multiple recounts were part of a massive conspiracy? The courts didn't want to look at the evidence," Trump insisted, voice rising. They were afraid of what they'd find. But the American people know the truth. They know I won by a landslide. Colbert paused and let the claim hang in the air. So you genuinely believe millions of voters, thousands of election workers, hundreds of officials, and dozens of judges all coordinated to steal an election from you? I'm telling you what I know, Trump said flatly. I got more votes than any sitting president in history, more than Obama, more than anyone, and somehow I lost to a guy who campaigned from his basement. Come on, Stephen. Even you can't believe that. The tension was now thick enough to cut. Audience members shifted in their seats. Colbert, frustrated but professional, decided to challenge him more directly. Here's what I believe, he said. Voice steady. I believe in facts. I believe in evidence. And I believe that when someone loses an election, the dignified thing is to accept the result and work for a peaceful transfer of power. That's what every president before you did. Trump's eyes flashed. Peaceful transition. You want to talk about a peaceful transition? What about the Russia hoax that hounded me my entire presidency? Constant investigations, constant harassment. Where was my peaceful transition? Those were legitimate investigations into legitimate concerns, Colbert replied. And you know what? You served your full term. You had 4 years to pursue your agenda, but after you lost, instead of accepting it, you spent months undermining faith in our electoral system. I spent months fighting for the American people Trump shot back. Agitation now obvious. I spent months trying to save our democracy from people who wanted to destroy it. And history will vindicate me. History will show I was right about everything. The studio got even quieter. Colbert sensed he'd touched a nerve, leaned back a bit, but didn't let up. History will vindicate you. That's a bold claim. But let's deal with right now. You're facing multiple legal cases. Do you take any responsibility for the actions that led to these investigations? Trump's jaw tightened. Responsibility. The only thing I'm responsible for is being the greatest president this country has ever seen. Everything else is fabricated, made up by political enemies who can't stand that I did more in 4 years than most do in 8. The greatest ever. Colbert said, eyebrows shooting up. That's quite a bar. What about Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Franklin, Roosevelt? Lincoln was good. He had a war, Trump replied dismissively. Washington was fine. He didn't have to build a wall or renegotiate trade deals. Roosevelt, different times. But if you look at what I did, economy, jobs, peace in the Middle East, it's unprecedented. Peace in the Middle East? Colbert cut in, incredulous. Are you watching the news? Pretty sure there's still conflict. They undid everything I did. Trump waved it off. The Abraham Accords, moving the embassy, everything was perfect until the current administration messed it up. Just like they messed up Afghanistan. Just like they messed up the economy. Hold up, Colbert, said, leaning forward. You're saying every single problem now is because of what happened after you left office. Nothing goes back to choices made during your presidency. That's exactly what I'm saying, Trump replied without hesitation. When I left, we had the greatest economy in history, the strongest military, the most respected country in the world. Look at us now. Disaster, Stephen. Total disaster. The audience had fallen completely silent, watching a verbal tennis match that was tipping into something heavier. Colbert took a measured breath. Let me ask you this. Do you ever consider that you might be wrong about something? That maybe your perspective isn't the only valid one? Trump looked genuinely puzzled. Wrong about what? I've been right about everything. Stephen, China, NATO, the border, energy independence. Name one thing I was wrong about. How about your prediction that COVID would just disappear? Colbert fired back. How about saying it would be gone by Easter? I never said inject bleach. Trump snapped, color rising. That's fake news. I was talking about disinfectants asking questions. I was being sarcastic. Your defense is sarcasm about a global pandemic that killed over 1 million Americans. Colbert's voice edged higher, his calm slipping. Sarcasm, I saved millions of lives. Trump insisted, pointing across the desk. Operation Warp Speed, closing the border to China. Everything I did was perfect. If Hillary Clinton had been president, we'd have lost 10 million, maybe more. Perfect again, Colbert muttered, shaking his head. Every decision perfect every time. Do you hear yourself? I hear someone who's jealous. Trump replied coolly. Your ratings depend on attacking me. Without Trump, what do you have? What is your show without me to kick around? The personal jab landed, and Colbert's expression hardened. My show is what it's always been, a place for honest conversations about important issues, something you seem incapable of having. Honest conversations. Trump laughed bitterly. You've spent years lying about me on TV. You built a career attacking me, and now you want to lecture me about honesty. I built a career on comedy and commentary. Colbert shot back. But when someone repeatedly lies to the American people, undermines democratic institutions, and refuses a peaceful transfer of power, that's not comedy. That's dangerous. Trump rose a bit in his chair, anger now plain. Dangerous, you want to know what's dangerous? A media that lies about everything, that fuels division, that tears apart the fabric of the country. You people are the real threat to democracy. We people. Colbert stood to, matching his energy. You mean journalists, comedians, anyone who questions you or holds you accountable. I mean people who hate America. Trump shot back, voice loud enough for every mic in the room. People who want to see this country fail, who celebrate when things go wrong, who root against their own president. I don't hate America, Colbert said, steady but intense. I love America. That's why I care when institutions are attacked. That's why I care when someone tries to overturn a fair election. That's why I care when someone puts ego above the good of the country. Trump's face was flushed, gestures sharp. My ego. Everything I've done is for this country. And what did I get? Non-stop attacks. Lies, harassment. You got to be President of the United States, Colbert answered pointedly. You held the most powerful office in the world, and when you lost re-election, you couldn't handle it. You couldn't accept that the American people chose someone else. The American people chose me. Trump insisted, nearly shouting, by the biggest margin in history. Everyone knows it. Everyone except people like you, too dishonest to admit it. The audience was visibly uneasy now. A few glanced toward the exits. Camera operators looked to producers, unsure whether to keep rolling. The tension had reached a breaking point. Both men were on their feet, squared off across the desk, like fighters waiting for the bell. Colbert took a breath, trying to regain control. We can keep shouting, or we can actually talk. But that means both of us acknowledging that maybe, just maybe, we don't have all the answers. That's why millions still support me. Trump shot back. That's why I'm leading in every poll. That's why I'm going to be your president again. My president? Colbert's voice dripped disbelief. After everything we've just covered, after your refusal to accept basic facts, you think the American people will put you back in office? Trump smiled, cold and certain. The American people know a winner when they see one. They recognize strength. They're tired of weakness, tired of failure, tired of being embarrassed by the current leadership. What they're tired of, Colbert said, pointing, is chaos. They're tired of waking up every morning wondering what the president tweeted at 3 a.m. They're tired of explaining to their kids why the president is calling people names on social media. My social media was the most powerful political communication tool in history. Trump shot back. I could reach hundreds of millions directly without the fake news outlets that employ you. And what did you use that power for? Colbert demanded. To spread conspiracy theories, to attack Gold Star families, to mock a disabled reporter, to call for your political opponents to be locked up. Trump's eyes flashed. I used it to tell the truth, something you wouldn't recognize if it hit you in the face. I used it to fight back against liars and losers trying to destroy our country. Liars and losers. Colbert repeated slowly. Is that what you call anyone who disagrees with you? The majority of Americans who voted against you. The majority voted for me. Trump insisted, his volume rising again. And deep down, you know it. You know the election was rigged. You're just too much of a coward to admit it. The word coward hung in the air like a spark near dry kindling. Colbert's face darkened. His voice dropped to a dangerously quiet register. Did you just call me a coward? You sit behind this desk every night making jokes about people who actually try to solve problems. Trump snapped. What have you built? What have you accomplished besides reading jokes off a teleprompter? The audience gasped. Several crew members moved closer, sensing the spiral. Colbert's hands clenched at his sides, the professional cool finally cracking. What have I accomplished? His voice shook with anger. I've spent my career trying to bring some truth and humanity to public discourse, using humor to help people get through hard times. And what have you done? You've divided families, turned neighbors against each other, made cruelty acceptable in American politics. I made America great again. Trump roared, now fully standing and leaning over the desk. I built the greatest economy, the strongest military, the most respected country in the world. You tear it down with your pathetic jokes and your Trump derangement syndrome. Trump derangement syndrome. Colbert laughed bitterly. You know what's deranged. A man who can't accept losing an election. Someone who thinks every institution that doesn't bow to him is corrupt. Someone who believes he's never been wrong about anything in his life. Trump slammed his palm on the desk. Pens and note cards jumped. I've been right about everything, Stephen. Everything. And history will prove it. But you'll never admit it. You're part of the swamp. Part of the system trying to take down the greatest president who ever lived. The greatest president who ever lived doesn't incite an insurrection when he loses. Colbert shot back, all pretense of gentility gone. The greatest president doesn't float injecting household cleaners during a pandemic. The greatest president doesn't call neo-Nazis very fine people. I never said that Trump screamed face now scarlet. That's a lie, like everything else you people say. You're fake news, Stephen. You're fake news, your show is failing, and you're a terrible person. At least I'm not a con man. Colbert fired back. At least I don't lie for a living. At least I don't prey on people's fears and prejudices to get what I want. That was the last straw. Trump's face shifted from red to almost purple as he yanked at his microphone with shaking hands. I don't have to sit here and listen to garbage from a third-rate comedian. You're nothing, Stephen. You're absolutely nothing without me. Then leave, Colbert said, arms crossed and voice icy. Walk out. Prove to everyone watching that when the questions get tough, when facts challenge you, you run away, like you always do. Trump hurled the mic onto the desk so hard it bounced and crashed to the floor. I'm not running from anything. I'm walking away from a waste of time. This show is fake. You're fake. Your audience is fake." He turned to the crowd, pointing. "You don't even really support him. You clap because you're told to clap. Deep down, you know I'm right about everything." Boos began to ripple through the audience, which only stoked his fury. "Boo all you want," he shouted. "I'll be back in the White House while you're still watching this loser recycle the same tired jokes night after night." Colbert, suddenly calm in contrast, spoke quietly but clearly. And there it is, faced with questions he can't answer and facts he can't dispute. He storms off, just like he stormed off from his responsibilities as president. Trump spun around one more time, voice hoarse from yelling. "You're going to regret this, Stephen. When I'm president again, remember this moment. Remember how you treated the greatest leader this country has ever seen." With that, he started for the exit. Security hustling to keep up. Trump wasn't quite done. Halfway to the stage door, he turned and shouted across the stunned room, "This interview is over. This show is over. And your career is over. Nobody talks to Donald Trump like that and gets away with it." He slammed the stage door hard enough that the echo reverberated through the theater. For a long beat, the silence was so complete, you could hear the electric hum of the lights. Colbert stood alone behind his desk, straightened his tie, and looked out at an audience frozen in disbelief. The cameras kept rolling as he lowered himself back into his chair and raked his hands through his hair. "Well," he said finally, barely above a whisper, "I guess that's how it ends, when someone who's never been told no finally meets someone who won't say yes." The studio stayed eerily quiet as crew members began moving around, unsure of the next step, while producers whispered frantically into headsets, trying to figure out how to handle what had just unfolded live in front of them. And that's it, one of the most explosive confrontations in late-night TV history. What do you think pushed Trump over the edge? Was it Colbert's refusal to back down? Or was this inevitable from the moment these two larger-than-life personalities sat down together